Warning, listening to Unleash Your Genius can be good for your health.
Symptoms may include looking and feeling better,
More energy, healthier kids, and increased productivity.
Unleash Your Genius podcast brings you the science, art, and philosophy of health, wellness,
Epigenetics, and lifestyle.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Unleash Your Genius podcast. I'm Dr. Brian Peterson. I'll be your host today, and I'm really excited about our guest, Dr. Brett Hill. He's been one of my favorite health and wellness experts for quite a while, and I've been following for him a long time. Dr. Brett Hill is a co-host of two of Australia's top-rated health podcasts, That Paleo Show and The Wellness Guys. He's a public speaker, he's a paleo advocate, he's a chiropractor, he's a barefoot runner, and author of numerous books and ebooks. He regularly appears on TV, radio, and in print, and his media appearances, seminars, coaching, and consulting have inspired thousands of people over the last decade to live a long, happy, healthy life, full of energy and vitality. And I'm really stoked to have Dr. Brett Hill on the show today. Hey, Dr. Brett, welcome.
Thanks for having me on board, buddy. Great to be here.
I'm so excited. I introduced you already, but for those of you that don't know, can you tell us just a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, there's a loaded question. Right? Well, I'm a father of two. I'm a chiropractor. I'm a podcaster, so I co-host two podcast shows, The Wellness Guys and That Paleo Show. I'm an author of several books, some ebooks, and I'm just really passionate about sharing health and wellness. Sharing my, really my chiropractic philosophy, but sharing my philosophy around health and wellness with the world because I think it's needed.
Right. Can you tell us about chiropractic and how you got into it?
Yeah, sure. So, I always wanted to do something in health. Ever since I was really little, like my mum has literally got a drawing that she's kept from when I was in about year 3, where I said I said two things. She was very excited about this. First of all, I said while I was at uni, I was going to work as a waiter to pay my way through uni. So she was very excited about that. A, the fact that I thought I was going to uni, and B, the fact that even at the age of 8, whatever I was, I'd already decided I was going to have to work and pay my way through. So she thought that was pretty cool. And then the second thing I said was when I get to uni, I was going to be a physiotherapist. Even from a young age, I had the idea that I wanted to help people. And I love nature. I love the outdoors. So growing up, I did Cubs and Scouts and Venturers, and I love camping and fishing and all that kind of stuff. So when it came to deciding what I was going to do for the rest of my life, because when I got to year 10 and had to decide what subjects I was doing, at that stage I felt like it was definitely a decision for the rest of my life. I got out the job guide, which is this big fat book that we have that literally has every single job under the sun in it. And I went through every single job that was there, just circling anything I was remotely interested in. And at this stage, I had really not much of an idea about chiropractic. I actually have 3 second cousins who are chiropractors, and they babysat me as I was growing up. And so I think that was probably the only way I had really any notion of what chiropractic might be. But even then, I didn't know a lot about it. I'd never been to a chiropractor. I'd never seen a chiropractor. But as I read about chiropractic, as I read about this whole notion that that this natural approach to health and that your body is, a self-healing and self-regulating organism and that perhaps your body doesn't need any help to be healthy, just no interference. So I thought, well, that just kind of made sense to me. So I thought, well, if I'm thinking of doing this chiropractic thing, I probably should actually go and see a chiropractor and see what they do. So I went on to a chiropractor, not because I had back pain or neck pain or headaches or anything like that, but just because I wanted to be as healthy as I possibly could be. And for me, I started to notice changes. So for me, some of the bigger changes, I was always sick growing up. I was probably on antibiotics about half a dozen times a year, and I just thought that was normal. From the time I first saw that chiropractor to today, I haven't taken an antibiotic since. In fact, aside from whatever they gave me when they took out one of my wisdom teeth, I haven't taken any form of medication in those last 18 years. So that was pretty cool. I was always asthmatic, so I was always wheezy. Whenever I had a cough or a cold or whenever I exercised, I got wheezy. And that went away to the point where, 4 or 5 years ago, I was able to run an ultra marathon, no problems at all. And well, not no problems. It was tough, but and the other big problem I had was sleep. It used to take me 2 or 3 hours to get to sleep each night. And once again, I just thought that was normal. That was just me. But having gone and seen this chiropractor, that all started to change. And so that then got me really, even more interested in chiropractic. I was really lucky in Adelaide to have some fantastic mentors who would, donate their time to come and do talks for chiropractic students and teach us all about chiropractic and all about health and wellness. And it just made so much sense. I just got so inspired. And I guess probably what inspired me most was realizing that there was this way of health. There was this way of living that most people either didn't know about or didn't know what to do about. And that was something that I could, potentially help share with a greater section of the community, and have a positive impact on people's health. And so that's why I decided to pursue chiropractic.
Nice. Did you have any mentors going through like chiropractic college or anything like that?
Yeah, look, I've had heaps of mentors along the way. I mean, early days was definitely some of the Adelaide chiropractors who, many of whom I still talk to and have as mentors today. So, guys like Pete Snodgrass, guys like Charles Williamson, guys like Paul Lawrence, guys like Andrew Kerr, all these guys used to donate their time. Lund Socks used to donate their time and come along and teach us at university. And so, we would get to listen to lectures from them. We get to ask them questions. They'd ask us questions and challenge us on stuff. They'd invite us into their practices to go and observe. And that was just a wonderful experience. I really started to realize that, in the world of health and wellness, there don't need to be competitors. It's not a business where, you have to worry about the guy down the street and think, oh, wow, what's he doing? I better make sure I'm, competing against him. But more so, hey, there's this guy down the street. That's awesome. We can work together and help an even greater section of our community be healthy. So, I started to discover this great community that is the chiropractic community. And as I'm now discovering through podcasting, the health and wellness community, which is wonderful. Going on from there, I guess mentors for me, in the early days, I used to really love listening to or reading the website of Dr. Joe McCullough. So McCullough.com, which is still around today and is a massive website, gets over 1 million downloads a month and just shares huge amounts of health and information. And what I loved about it at the time was lots of research, so that was great. Guys like James Chestnut, who's a chiropractor from Canada who travels around, sharing great information about movement and exercise and mindset and chiropractic and how that can all tie in together. So that was wonderful. Guys like Mark Postles, who is my mentor and my chiropractic coach early on. I learned heaps from Mark. And probably one of my biggest mentors going through has been a chiropractor in Adelaide by the name of Patrick Sim. He's now probably one of my best friends. I was in the party at his wedding, and he was my first mentor. He was when I first came out to Adelaide, he was the chiropractor who I worked for, and he's just got a great mind and a great way of thinking about things and questioning things and challenging things that I love, and we have fantastic discussions all the time. So he's definitely been a big mentor of mine as well.
And you're big in the chiropractic politics. Weren't you the president of South Australian Association? Is that right?
Yeah. I was on the board in the Chiropractic Association in South Australia for a number of years. I started off doing the PR portfolio because that sort of made sense to me. That was kind of what I knew and what I'd been doing. And then, eventually, I don't know if I stepped forward or if everyone else stepped back, but I ended up president of the Chiropractic Association in South Australia for a couple of years, which was, an interesting time. It was just kind of as our national registration was all coming together and coming through. So it was a very interesting time to be president, certainly.
Hey, Brett, when I think of you as a chiropractor, but I also think of you as the paleo guy, right? For years, as I've been listening to the wellness guys, you were always the paleo influence. Can you tell us a bit about how you found the paleo diet?
Yeah, for sure. Once again, I think my chiropractic philosophy is what's kind of led me to just about everything else I've ended up doing in my life because, chiropractic is a way of life. It's a way of thinking about the world. It's a philosophy. And so, when you start to apply that philosophy to everything else around you, then you start to come up with some different conclusions perhaps to what the rest of society is doing sometimes. And so Paleo for me was just a really natural progression from my chiropractic philosophy. Like, if you start thinking about this philosophy that says your body needs no help, no interference, you start thinking, well, okay, that's interesting. So what might I be doing that would be interfering with my body? And what could I be doing to help my body? What's my body designed to do? What did my body evolve to require? And so the paleo diet for me was just a natural extension of that. It made sense that if I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to have any interference in my body, then I shouldn't be putting in stuff into my body that my body didn't know how to deal with. I should be putting stuff into my body that wasn't food. And so I started looking at what I was eating and what I was consuming and started, take a more critical approach to it. And certainly, as I said before, being led by influences from people like Joe McCullough and then James Chestnut and then, starting to read stuff from Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson and Lauren Cordain and a lot of these other people in the paleo community. The more I read the more it just seemed to make sense, and the more it just seemed to fit in with my philosophy, with my way of looking at the world, that if I could just give my body what it required and give it none of what it didn't require, then it was going to thrive and be healthy. And that comes through in the food, but it also comes through in terms of movement and exercise. It even comes through in terms of mindset and the way you think about stress. So that whole paleo lifestyle was really, for me, just a very natural extension of my philosophy.
Where did you first start to gain your knowledge? Was there someone in particular? You mentioned Mercola.
Yeah, it was probably Mercola to start with. I mean, in many ways, I gained it from lots of different places. I would go as a chiropractic student, I would go and observe chiropractors on a really regular basis. And so I think, as much as anything, I think when you're in this sort of chiropractic community, when you're in this health and wellness community, we're very lucky. We're very blessed. We get to go along to seminars and hear from these amazing thinkers, and lateral thinkers in the world of health and wellness. And you get to learn some information that's perhaps not as readily available in the mainstream. So I was kind of picking up stuff all over the place, just from going and talking to different chiropractors, from going and talking to different health practitioners, from, going to much of it in the early days came from chiropractic seminars. And really a lot of my drive to want to go and publish articles in newspapers and write books and do podcasts and all that, be on radio and all those sort of things, a lot of the drive to do that was from sitting in chiropractic seminars thinking, wow, this information that is being shared with us is phenomenal. And some of it was from chiropractors, some of it was from non-chiropractors. Some of it was just about chiropractic, or not just, but some of it was about chiropractic. Some of it was about diet and exercise and mindset. And I thought, this information is fantastic. But what I noticed was that I would turn around, I'd walk out the door of that seminar, and I'd walk out into the, quote unquote, the real world, and no one else was really aware of it or doing anything about this information. And, it hadn't been made readily available to them. And even if it was, they weren't really sure what to do with it. And so that was a big part of my drive, was all this information I'd gleaned from lots and lots of different sources, but just realizing that, I was in a really fortunate position, and even more so nowadays with the podcast we do. We get to interview experts from all over the world. I've been in a really fortunate position to be able to glean this information from lots and lots of different sources, and it just fueled me to want to share that and want other people to be aware of that as well. So,
Brett, can you answer, I'm sure you get this all the time, some criticisms about people who don't know about the paleo diet that often, you hear on the news, oh, it's dangerous, or, so-and-so doesn't recommend it. What, just for some of our listeners that hear that, can you shed some light on how the paleo diet, from your perspective, is healthy and safe?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's, when it comes down to it, it's just eating real food. It's just whole, real food. And it's eating the food that our ancestors evolved eating. So our ancestors could not possibly have evolved to eat those foods if they weren't healthy. If those foods were killing them off, they would have evolved differently. So eating the foods that we evolved to require just makes sense. And so you hear criticisms about, there'll still be sometimes criticisms about the fat content in the paleo diet. Well, we know that fat research is totally outdated, and that healthy fats are really important, that healthy fats are actually essential for our health, particularly for our hormones. They're really important in terms of weight management and satiation. So, we know that fat kind of myth is a bit, it's pretty much been debunked now. The other one you'll hear is, well, you need to have healthy whole grains. You need to have these healthy whole grains in your diet. And when people say that, I say, why? They say, well, they're an important part of the diet. They're a big part of the food. I say, yeah, but what nutrients do I get from healthy whole grains that I can't get from the paleo diet? And when you ask people that question, there is no answer. There's no answer to what I can get from those grains. So, I understand that some people do okay on grains, and some people may find that they like having that in their diet, or they choose to have in their diet, and that's fine. But there's no requirement to have that in your diet. So that's the other one. The other one people will say is, well, it's too high in protein. It's a protein-based diet. And really, paleo diet isn't a protein-based diet. Paleo diet's based around lots and lots of fruits and vegetables, some healthy fats, and a moderate amount of protein. It's not just eating meat all day long. So it's, often I see paleo people and they'll use the hashtag, more veggies than a vegetarian, because when you're really doing the paleo diet right, you're eating bucket loads of veggies, getting heaps of nutrients in. So, the other one I guess that comes up sometimes is the one around meat, and people say, oh, eating meat causes cancer. And my response to that is, well, show me a study where people have been eating grass-fed, organic, free-range meat, and that's caused them cancer. Because most of the studies I've seen is people eating hamburgers and hot dogs and processed meats. And so, given what we know about the ingredients in there, it's not surprising there's a link there to cancer. So, my way of thinking is, well, if you eat the diet that your body has evolved to require, then it makes sense that that's going to be the diet that nourishes your body and helps your body perform without any interference.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean
others maybe not, but it makes so much sense to me.
Hey, let's switch into one of your other passions that I see around a lot with you lately is barefoot running. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's once again, it's kind of just the same philosophy, isn't it? I mean, the way your body evolved to run was not with a big wedge under your heels, right? And people say, oh, but I don't wear high heels. But, if you look at your average runner, it still has a pretty decent wedge. I know when I first started barefoot running, I'd been wearing some, Asics Kianos. And I'd literally just spent $300 and something on a brand new pair of shoes like a week before I discovered barefoot running, which was kind of devastating. But, they had a massive wedge under the heel. And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, that just doesn't make sense. At the same time, I'd spent 17 years wearing orthotics. So I had this brace under my arch to help maintain the arch in my foot. And the more I thought about it as a chiropractor, I always tell everyone that movement is the most important thing for your body. And that, my goal as a chiropractor is not to put you in a back brace and lock your body into this ideal lumbar curves to save you, because I know that doesn't make sense. That, once you take that brace off, then you're left with a weakened structure rather than a stronger structure. And you're better off actually training your body to use your body's natural stabilizers and muscles to protect yourself. And so I thought about the feet, and I thought, well, that doesn't make sense either. If all I'm doing is having a passive, arch support here to support my feet, rather than retraining and reconditioning the muscles and ligaments in my feet to do what they're designed to do naturally, which is maintain a healthy arch, which is actually allow that arch to collapse, because the collapsing of your arches pronation is actually a natural, normal thing. We shouldn't stop it. We should allow it to happen, because that's one of the big shock absorbers in our feet. Not only that, it allows us to, as you regain that arch, as you take your foot off, then that spring provides some momentum back into your body as well. So, and then I started to learn that, well, when you actually do take out that heel lift, when you do have a more neutral foot strike, then it improves your posture when you're running. It allows you to lean forward and use your body weight to propel you forwards. It all just makes sense. Our bodies are incredibly, incredibly intelligent, and they've been designed or evolved, however you want to think about it, over millions of years to be perfectly suited to doing what they do. And so if you remove that interference and allow your body to do what it does best, your body will actually run more naturally with actually better technique. I've seen videos of this on YouTube. There's a guy, I always forget if his name's Lieberman or Liebenson or something like that, and he got people on a treadmill and he got them running in shoes, and he measured the ground reaction force going back up their legs. And then he took their shoes off, got them doing exactly the same thing without any shoes, without any training, just said, just try it without your shoes on. And they actually had less force going back up into their body without shoes than with shoes, because their bodies are clever and they just naturally adopted to a more natural gait and to a less shocking, a better shock absorbing gait, which was healthier for their body. Less force on their hips, their knees, their lower back. So once again, it just makes sense. Our bodies are designed to operate in a certain way, and the more you can remove the interference and give your body what it needs, then the better it tends to do it.
Is it hard to learn?
Yes and no. There is some technique stuff. I mean, really, most kids you watch will do it. So it's not really necessarily learning. It's more like relearning or unlearning our bad habits, right? So there's some technical tips there. I'm actually, as we speak, I'm putting together an online e-course to teach people how to do it, because I've been running workshops on how to do it, over the last couple of years all around Australia. And but I'm finding now that getting to all the different locations and all the people is a bit trickier. So I'm putting it together as an e-course for online learning. And there are some some technical aspects to it. There's some postural stuff. Getting yourself a good chiropractor is always a good idea to get that posture right. There's some flexibility stuff that can come into it. So sometimes you'll need to do a few extra stretches and exercises to help with that. But for the most part, it's quite natural. The more you, or probably the less you get between your feet and the ground, the more you will naturally start to do it. So you need to be a little bit careful. It's not for everyone. There are some people with congenital anomalies. There are some people with chronic diseases. There are some people with arthritides and previous injuries who it's not right for. But I think for the vast majority of the population, if you just, have less between you and the ground, you're more likely to naturally start falling into a better technique, a better posture, and a better running pattern.
Nice. Hey, can would you have some information or links of any of your information that we could share?
Yeah. If people go to my website, which is drbretthill.com, and in fact, if they go /shop, they'll find in there the Barefoot Running ebook, which I wrote with Kim Morrison. So there's lots of some good information there. That's a really good spot to start. If they want more information than that, there's books out there. There's a book called Chi Running by a guy called Danny Dreyer, which is really good. There's a new book that's just come out from now I'm having a blank on it. Kelly Starrett, which I actually haven't read yet, but I'm really keen to read. I think that's going to be a great one because he knows his stuff, and I've seen a little bit about him talking about natural running before as well. So, there's some good books out there you can check out. Otherwise, if you head onto YouTube and really search any of the shoe brands which do barefoot shoes, so like Vivo Barefoot and Vibram Five Fingers, they have videos and instructional stuff on there as well that you can check out too.
Awesome. Hey, Brett. So the podcast, our Unleash Your Genius podcast, is really about helping people change their lifestyles, right? Go from one lifestyle to the next, like a healthier lifestyle. And so I've got this question that I ask everyone. I know you've done this 100 times already, but I want you to imagine that you've been invited to speak in front of a huge group of people that are just about to do a lifestyle, like a 12-week lifestyle challenge. So you're the keynote speaker, and you're going to give them like 3 main points to help them get through this lifestyle challenge and have greater success thereafter. So I was wondering if you could share with us a few things, like 2 or 3 items in that speech that you would share to help them with their success.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably what I would say to people taking on a 12-week challenge like that is that not everyone succeeds in making change in that way. So, making change all at once can be difficult and it can be challenging. And many people have done it before. They've been to a gym and they've signed up for a 12-week program, or they've joined a certain diet and they've done it for 12 weeks. And then they've kind of fallen off the wagon at the end of it. And so what I would say to people is, be gentle on yourself, be kind to yourself. It may be that you're one of those people who can take on that 12-week challenge and then kick on from there and keep making those changes for the rest of your life. And if you are, fantastic, well done. For many people, they won't succeed at doing that. They'll be making too much change too soon, and they'll find that hard to stick to. So for those people, I would say that's okay. What you've had is an opportunity to do that for 12 weeks and to see what's possible. If I was to be doing this all the time, these are the sort of changes I might experience. So just notice what you notice. Notice if you feel more energetic, if you feel fitter, if your body looks leaner, if you, if your hormones are better, whatever it is you notice. Just really pay attention and notice. And then once you've noticed that, just realize that that's what's possible for you. And if you then at the end of that fall off the wagon, that's okay. But just know that there are ways of getting back on track as well. So what it may mean then for you is that you need to make it, you need to pick smaller challenges. You need to make it easier for yourself. So rather than trying to change everything at once for 12 weeks, you might just want to pick one of those little things to make a change. Because at the end of the day, making a change for 12 weeks doesn't do much for your health. Okay, if you make a change for 12 weeks and then fall back off the wagon, you're probably going to end up in a worse state if you keep doing that than if you just did nothing at all. You're going to stress your body out. Usually when you fall back, you end up falling back to a worse position than what you started in. So, if you just keep doing those 12-week cycles, you're probably not doing your body any favors. So you need to start thinking about longer-term changes. You need to start thinking about how you can make change in a way that's going to be sustainable, because where you are in 5 years or 10 years is far more important than where you are in 12 weeks. Okay, so what that might mean is pick one small thing, make one small change, pick the thing you'd most like to change, pick the thing you think is going to be easiest for you to change, and make that change and make it for the rest of your life. Because when you do that, and when you succeed at doing that, because you've picked a small thing and an easy thing, you'll actually get some positive reinforcement. You'll feel good about that change, and it'll make it easier to make another change and another change and another change. So you can actually then snowball it, and you can make a huge amount of change in 5 years' time, but just by making one small change at a time. The beauty of that, though, is you're making sustainable changes. You're making changes that you can keep doing for the rest of your life. Or, at some stage you may fall off the wagon there too, but you've got then a framework to keep going. The key is make sustainable changes and keep doing it. And you know, they often say people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. You know, so don't try and do it all at once. Just make sustainable changes, and over the long term, over the year, over the 5 years, over the 10 years, you'll end up made massive changes.
Nice.
How's that?
Hey, that was
I don't know
awesome.
if that was 3.
That was gold. Thank you.
It's kind of like 10 all rolled into one.
The value pack. Hey, Brett, I think you and I might have had similar lifestyles in our 20s. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think fast food, you know, binge drinking, the weekends, the
definitely.
whole thing. I like to focus on, I'm really interested in transformation and change and those paradigm changes. Can you describe maybe what happened in your life, how you changed? Was it a gradual thing? Just a little bit about that from going from
absolutely.
the partying to
So look, in my early 20s, in my late teens, I was very much someone who, I would go out drinking 3-4 nights a week. You know, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Sometimes I'd sneak in another session during the week. You know, we would be out until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, drinking heavily, eating kebabs, all that sort of stuff. You know, I was working at a hardware store at the time when I went through, you know, late school, early university days. So, you know, there was a bit of a drinking culture there, and you know, I would go down to the local deli at lunchtime. I would have a pie, a pasty, a 1.25 litre soft drink, and a Mars bar, and think absolutely nothing of it. You know, people will hate me because I didn't put on any weight. I was skinny as a rake, but I certainly wasn't healthy. You know, I was always getting sick, and so for me, it just came to the fact that the more I learned about health and wellness, the more it just didn't make sense. You know, that I was pursuing this career where I wanted to help people remove interference from their bodies and promote health within their bodies, and I wasn't doing that within myself. And so it wasn't necessarily that I got, you know, I didn't get really terribly sick. I didn't have chronic disease. I didn't have inflammation, or I probably did. I just didn't have any obvious symptoms of it. Right. For me, it was more of a philosophical decision of, well, do you know what? If I keep doing this, you know, eventually something's going to happen. This doesn't make sense anymore. I'm not treating my body very kindly. Combined with the fact that I thought, well, you know, if I'm going to be telling other people to do this, then I better start doing it myself. You know, I better start leading by example, because I'm not going to be able to help anyone get healthy if I'm a, you know, overweight alcoholic, you know, whatever. So, you know, I decided that I would just make a change, and it all happened very gradually for me. So the more I learnt, the more I started to make changes, and it was just very much as I just described. For me, it was one little bit at a time. You know, I made that change over, well, what is now probably close to 20 years, you know, and I'm still making changes on a consistent basis. You know, I'm still constantly assessing my life, saying, is this going to work for me in the long term? And if not, how can I go about starting to make a change? And what can I actively do to change that? And so I'm constantly changing things, adding things in, taking things out, you know, just playing around to see how I can remove as much interference as possible, give my body as much of what it needs as possible. And so for me, it has been very much small changes repeatedly over a period of decades that have led me to go from, you know, like I said, pie, pasty, 1.25 litre soft drink and a Mars bar to now, you know, very healthy, clean diet, exercising regularly, you know, doing stuff daily to help with my mindset and managing stress and all of those sort of things, you know, that I just are naturally part of my life now, because I've just gradually evolved and added in bit by bit in a really sustainable way, new things into my lifestyle.
Back in the beginning, though, like when you were going from the pies to maybe starting to cook for yourself, did you, what was it like in the kitchen for you? Did you embrace that? Was it a struggle? You know
I suck in the kitchen. Like, I still suck in the kitchen. I've expanded my repertoire exponentially. You know, particularly, you know, over the last 3 or 4 years, you know, I was, you know, I was with a partner for 13 years, married for 8 years. And so during that time, I wasn't, you know, in the kitchen as much as I am now. In the last 3 or 4 years, I've had to have an even steeper learning curve of, you know, of cooking and doing all that stuff for myself. So, but you know, for the most part, I just did things really simply. You know, it may be unfortunate in that I grew up in a family where, you know, many of our meals were just meat and 3 veg. You know, I mean, often we would have bread on the side, but really it was meat and 3 veg. And so for me, you know, having a steak and some broccolini and some carrots and maybe some sweet potato or pumpkin on the side, it's just a very simple, natural, easy thing for me. So for me, it was really just about keeping it simple. I'm not a gourmet chef in any stretch of the imagination. I managed to add in a few herbs and spices nowadays and spice things up. And, mostly for the sake of the kids, I've learned how to do some more paleo desserts and maybe some more fun things and nut balls and smoothies and different things like that. But it's probably exactly the same. I started off just doing the very simple things and doing what I knew I could do and what was easy for me and what I knew was sustainable for me. And as time has gone on, I've gradually added, a recipe here, a recipe there, some herbs and spices here, some extra flavor there. And I've just gradually gotten better and better in the kitchen. So it's very much the same. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. If people start the paleo diet, they can be really overwhelmed at the start of you look on Instagram and you see these people making these really fancy flash paleo recipes and you think, wow, I've got so much to learn to be able to do that. But if you just keep it simple and stick to what you can do in a sustainable way and then gradually add to that as you go along, it becomes a whole lot less daunting and a lot easier. Yeah,
that's such good advice. I see so many people that get scared or, it looks daunting to start to learn how to cook. And that's such good advice. Just, start simple. So, Dr. Brett, what are you doing? What's your favorite form of exercise now?
Oh, that's a good question. My favorite form of exercise at the moment, which is not the one that I do most frequently, but my favorite form of exercise at the moment when it's summer is kayak fishing. So wow. I've got myself this little 2.5-seater kayak, which I can take my kids out on, and I head out with my squid jag, and I paddle out until I get to where the seaweed is, and I paddle along the beach up against the current, and then I drift back and I squid off of my kayak. And that is definitely at the moment one of my favorite forms of fitness because it's fitness without even realizing you're getting fitness. You're just exercising. And so, the things I love to do most are probably those sort of things, whether it's riding my bike with the kids, whether it's hiking, whether it's kayak fishing. I might go and hire a stand-up paddleboard and do some stand-up paddleboarding. Those sort of active things are what I probably love. But what I do more frequently at the moment, I've just started doing CrossFit. So for the last couple of months, I've been kind of toying with the idea of doing CrossFit for years. I read the CrossFit journals about 5 years ago, and I've kind of always said one day I'm going to do that. So over the last couple of months, I've been getting into CrossFit. So I've been doing that 3 days a week, which has been really fun. And so pretty much I do that 3 days a week. And then on the weekends, I just make sure I do something each day. Like I said, whether it's going for a walk with the kids, whether it's kayaking, bike riding, hiking, just something, or, snorkeling, something more active where we get out and we just kind of have some incidental fitness. Because that's really enjoyable, and really that's why you do the fitness, so that you can get out and enjoy the nature, enjoy the outdoors, enjoy or whatever it is for you. It might be gardening, it might be dancing, it might be golf, whatever it is that you love doing. That's why you do fitness, so that you can do those things that you love and not feel like you're being held back by your body.
Right. It sounds more like you're playing than exercising most of the time. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite things to do, and I always recommend this to people, is if I go to the playground with my kids, is I'll say to my kids, all right, we're going to play follow the leader. So you guys go wherever you go, and wherever you go, I'm going to have to follow you. Right. So then my kids go through the playground and they're like deliberately climbing over and under things that they know are going to be difficult for, my big frame to get over and under. And they think it's hilarious. They think it's so much fun. It's so engaging with the kids. But I tell you, it's a great workout, and you work out in ways that you never normally would. You're climbing down to, climb under something that's only a foot above the ground. You never do that. And so, play is fantastic. It's the best way to get your fitness in.
That is a hard workout too. I've done that with my kids, and you'd be surprised at how quick you're huffing and puffing.
And they love it. They think it's hilarious.
Yeah. Brett, what about a morning ritual or a routine? Anything that you follow or do to get your day started?
Do you know what? I'm not big on morning routines. Like, I have never really been a morning person. So, for me at the moment, getting up early in the morning, like I get up at least one day a week, 6 a.m. to go to CrossFit, or 5:30 in the morning to go to CrossFit. That's early for me. Like, I'm not a morning person. I know that. I've often looked at it, and I look around at, all the people who I look up to in the world and the people who are really successful and really doing well, and they all seem to be morning people, and they all say you've got to get up at 5 in the morning, you've got to get up at 6 in the morning, and I've never been able to do it. It's one of those ones that's still on my list of, sustainable changes that I might make one day, just couple of notches under CrossFit, so I've gone to that one. But so I'm not a morning person. I don't like getting up any earlier than I have to in the morning. So probably my only morning ritual really is having a decent shower. Like if I don't get in the shower and have my 5 or 10 minutes to myself in the shower of just kind of, I don't know, mentally preparing for my day, just having a little bit of me time as much as anything. Yeah. My day doesn't go well. Like I just need that little bit of time to myself just to be like a little bit of me time, just chilling out in the shower. And so that's probably, to be honest, that's probably the only thing I consistently do each day, because I mean, I don't even consistently eat breakfast each morning, because since I've been doing paleo, I find that often I'm just not that hungry at breakfast time. And so, well, you know, right now it's 11:55 in the morning, so it's almost lunchtime. I haven't eaten yet today. But I'm just not that hungry. You know, I fill myself up on really healthy fats and nutritious, nutrient-dense foods. You know, I've converted to be more of a fat burner rather than craving the carbs and sugars all the time. So I don't feel like I have that insatiable need to keep constantly restoking the fire. So breakfast isn't sort of a part of the routine for me. So some mornings I get up, you know, obviously 3 or 4 mornings a week I've got the kids. So that's, you know, getting up, getting them ready for school, breakfast, all that sort of stuff. You know, other mornings I don't have the kids and I might be getting up for CrossFit, or, you know, getting up to go do some activity or go to work or whatever. And then, then other mornings I'm getting up and I've got podcasts and interviews and stuff to do. So it's quite variable. I really don't have a consistent morning routine.
Right.
There you go.
Awesome. Tell me about your podcast.
Yeah. So we got I co-host 2 podcasts. So the first of those is The Wellness Guys. We've just celebrated our 5th year anniversary, which is amazing.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
I know, it's amazing. It's incredible to think that it's been 5 years. It really doesn't seem anywhere near that long. And that just came about, you know, quite organically. You know, 3 chiropractors who we all sort of, you know, knew of each other but didn't know each other incredibly well. But we all knew we wanted to get a message out there, and we were all doing sort of similar things in different ways. And we got together one day, and Lawrence Tam, one of my co-hosts, said, "Let's do a podcast." And I said, "What's a podcast?" And he explained to me what it was. And literally within days, we'd recorded our first podcast. Wow. We actually never intended that first episode to go live. It was just, we were just playing around with seeing what it would sound like. And to this day, that is episode 1. It's live on the internet. People can still listen to it, which is quite scary.
That's so cool.
But it just kind of took off. You know, within 4 months, it was the number 2 health podcast show in Australia. And we had no idea. We had a fan contact us and say, "Hey, did you know that your podcast is ranked number 2? And we said, "No, we didn't. Where are the rankings?" And they said, "Oh, you've got to go to iTunes and you find them there." So I had to download iTunes because I didn't have iTunes. And I looked up the rankings and saw that there we were, number 2 health podcast show in Australia. So we were stoked, so excited. We recorded an interview that day, said, "Isn't this amazing? We're number 2 health podcast in Australia. We're so pumped, blah, blah, blah." And then we looked at the rankings the next day and we were number 1. So within the space of 4 months, without really advertising, you know, all we had was a Facebook page and a website where we loaded up the stuff. We'd gone from nothing to number 1 ranked health podcast in Australia. So we realized, wow, there's something to this. You know, this is obviously resonating with people. People do want this information. And so we just got, you know, really inspired to want to share this message with the world. And the more it grew, the more it organically grew. And people wanted more. You know, people started to say, well, you know, instead of doing your podcast once a week, could you do it once a day? And we went, oh, far out. Wow. You know, we've all got families, we've all got kids, we've all got our own practices, although Lawrence doesn't practice anymore. But at that stage, we all had our own practices. We all had our own businesses outside of our practices. And the idea of then, you know, doing 1 recording a day just wasn't doable for us. So we kind of sparked on the idea. We chatted to a couple of friends, and we sparked on the idea of getting some other podcasts on board. So then within 2 years, I think we had 5 podcasts. We started the Up for a Chat show with Cindy O'Meara and her friends, which has become incredibly popular. And that was when that Paleo show started. So that was my other, obviously, passion, was doing the Paleo stuff. Lots of people were asking for more information about that. You know, I was pretty keen to interview some of the people that, you know, I looked up to in the Paleo world. And so I started the podcast of that Paleo show, which has now been going for about 3 years. And that's been great. You know, that's my little baby where I get to kind of do whatever I want. You know, I can just interview and talk to whoever I want. Most of them seem to say yes, which is quite nice. And, you know, I've had a couple of different co-hosts over the journey, but it's now just me on that show. And that's been wonderful. You know, that is now, you know, one of our top 3 or 4 ranked shows on the network. And the network has just boomed. You know, we're constantly introducing new people and new shows, new audiences to the Wellness Couch. We've now got, I think, 22 different podcast shows on the Wellness Couch.
That's amazing.
And so it's just grown and grown and grown into this big thing. You know, we get I think it's about 2 million downloads a year now on the Wellness Couch network, which is just mind blowing. It's amazing. And we get to run our live events now, the Wellness Summit, which is coming up really soon. And it just blows us away, you know, to see an audience there of, you know, last year we had 700 people. This year we're expecting 1,000 people, all crammed into this one venue because of something that, you know, that started as a conversation between myself, Lawrence, and Damien is just, it's phenomenal. It gives you goosebumps.
So
it's
cool.
Amazing.
Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's very cool. And the stories you hear from that, you know, just from chatting to people and hearing, you know, what they took out of it, what they learnt from it, what they've changed in their life because of it, you know, how they're influencing others around them because of it. And you realize the ripple effect that's created and the effect that it has on people's families and lives. And it's amazing. You know, that's the best bit about the Wellness Summit for me is actually meeting these people and hearing their stories. It's just so inspiring. So
cool. Yeah. Something you guys definitely should be so proud of. That's awesome. Hey, tell us about your book, How to Eat an Elephant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been an interesting journey on how to eat an elephant. So I wrote that. That got published about the same time as we started the Wellness Guys. It's been out for about 5 years now. And it was really all about trying to put everything I had in terms of that health and wellness information and creating sustainable change into a format where I could make it into a book, but particularly not just any old book. It needed to be a book, A, that people would read, because I looked at the stats of the percentages of books that actually got read, and it was kind of depressing. And B, that not only would they read it, but they would actually do something about it. They would actually be able to take action. And so I wrote this book called How to Eat an Elephant, and it's all about creating sustainable lifestyle change. All the stuff that I've been talking about so far on this interview is really encapsulated into that book. Yeah. Unfortunately, at the moment, I'm not allowed to sell the book. Because of complaints made to our regulatory body about content in the book. So there was some stuff in the book that perhaps some people in the more mainstream community felt was controversial, where I'd spoken about things like medical interventions and birthing choices and making informed choices around medical care. I'd spoken about stuff about chiropractic where people weren't happy with stuff that I'd said about chiropractic. And so a result of that and threats that I'd received about, you know, my license and possible criminal prosecution, my lawyer advised me to remove that book from sale. So at the present moment, the book is not available for sale, which is really very disappointing.
What a shame.
I'm unsure. I'm unsure at the moment as to whether I'm going to try and, you know, edit it to the point where they say it's okay, or just write a whole new book, which I've had some discussions with Hay House just recently about, or eventually whether I decide that I might just cease to practice as a chiropractor and then be able to say what I want and without the censorship that's currently going on, because it's pretty full on at the moment. They're really cracking down and limiting the scope of all really alternative health practitioners, and it's not a healthy environment. You know, it's an environment where people are no longer being able to make an informed choice because they're not getting given all of the information. They're not being given both sides of the story. Now, you know, the registration board will say they're doing that for the safety of the public because they want, they don't want people saying things that might not be backed up by double-blind randomized control studies, even though, you know, the research suggests that maybe only about 18% of medicine is. But they don't want alternative health practitioners to be, you know, saying stuff that's not backed up by double-blind randomized control studies. And so, their version is that they're protecting the public. My version is that that's a really dangerous situation where we're denying people the ability to hear both sides of the story and make their own informed choice. And I think where that's happened over history, it hasn't ended well. So I think people need to, start becoming aware of what's going on at the moment, the health scene, the power that some of these pharmaceutical companies, the power that some of these skeptics groups like Friends of Science in Medicine and the Skeptics Societies, the influence they're having is large. Much of it's going on behind the scenes without people realizing. And it's going to end up with people being limited in their choice of what they can do for healthcare and limited in the availability of information from those who are probably best positioned to give it to them. So those who are from registered health professions, who have got university degrees and backgrounds, who are able to read the science, are being limited in what they're able to say, whilst members of the public who aren't in that position are still able to say whatever they want. So I think is a really there's going to come a real tipping point in the next couple of years. So I hope people are becoming aware, and I hope people are going to become actively involved in demanding freedom of choice and freedom of expression when it comes to their healthcare.
You're right, and I think that's the only place where it's going to come from is from the people. If everyone
Absolutely.
becomes educated, it'll never come from the top down. From what I understand.
No, there's too much political clout, and there's too much money, and there's too much bias for it to come from the top. It's that sounds like I'm like a wacko conspiracy theorist, but all you need to do is look back at what happened when the research started to come out about smoking being dangerous for your health.
Yeah.
And if you look back at that, you'll very quickly see why we can't rely on it coming from the top down.
Right. Well, I'm optimistic. I mean, people are smart if they get the information. Like you and I say, it just makes sense when you when you put it all together. So even though there is turbulent times, I like to be optimistic that this is a time for change.
Well, the thing is, the consumers still have their the biggest thing you can do is your right to choose.
Vote with your dollar.
The biggest power you've got for anyone listening to this is choose. And the more you choose healthy food, the more it's going to become available. The more you choose organics, then the more organics are going to become available, and the more the price will come down. The more you demand that your private health insurers cover you for alternative therapies, then the more that's going to become available. The more you demand from your politicians that they allow freedom of choice and freedom of expression in healthcare, then the more that's going to happen. So it comes down to the choice of the individual. And every single one of you has a voice, and every single one of you gets to make a choice. And exactly right, vote with your dollar. And that's what people will listen to.
Well done. Dr. Brett, you rock. Thank you for all of your generous time.
Thanks for having me on, buddy.
Hey, can you links to all of your stuff? I'll be putting that on the show notes. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So they can head to drbretthill.com, which is my website, and find me there. They can find all the podcasts on the wellnesscouch.com. And they can also find me, Dr. Brett Hill, on Facebook and Instagram, all over social media. So they can find all that, heaps of information there as well.
Awesome. Good on you, mate. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks so much for listening to Unleash Your Genius with your host, Dr. Brian Peterson. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit unleashyourgenius.com. We'll catch you next time.
Hey, what's up? I hope you guys liked this episode. And if you did, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. And most importantly, give us a review and give us a 5-star rating too, please. All right. See ya. Oh, wait, and don't forget www.unleashyourgenius.com. Come check us out.